Hi guys, welcome to Amy's Cooking. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I'm really excited about today's recipe. So this is the Taiwanese Castella cake. This type of cake uses whipped egg whites to stabilize the cake instead of using baking powder. And so a lot of times when people bake this cake, they have a tendency to end up with a cake that has a cracked top, or when they remove it from the oven, it has a tendency to collapse. So as you can see here, this type of cake, it is super moist. It is very, very soft and it's very, very light. So the integrity of the cake is highly dependent on how you whip the egg whites and how you fold in the batter. Also, the way that you bake the cake really does make a difference. I'm hoping that in this video, I'll be able to walk you through the steps and give you great helpful hints to be able to avoid those problems and successfully bake this absolutely amazing pistachio cake. So first things first, you do have to have your baking pan lined with parchment paper so it can be so much easier when you remove. We're going to preheat the oven to 310 degrees. Inside the oven, we're going to need a baking tray filled with about 1.5 inch of water. We're going to place it on the fourth rack down because my heat source is from the top. So the first thing is the pistachio. We have to grind these up. They come without shells and it is salted, so we won't need any salt in the recipe, but we do have to grind them up. And as when you grind them, you want to grind them as finely as you possibly can. So this is about 4 minutes of high-speed grinding for me in a food processor, and this is as small as I can get them. If you can get them even smaller, that's even better. If not, that's okay. Next up, we're going to need 6 eggs. These are eggs that are straight from the refrigerator. They are large size. You do need them cold, and so that will help when we whip the egg whites. Now, once you've cracked them, go in with your hands. This is the easiest way to avoid the yolk from breaking. Just make sure your hands are clean and washed. As for the butter, we are using unsalted butter today, and we're going to need 1 full stick. You want to at least have it at room temperature. If you don't have it at room temperature, that's fine. I have a tendency to do that. Just make sure that you cut them into smaller pieces so that when we add it to the milk and we melt the butter, it's going to take less time to melt that butter so that the milk doesn't get overly heated. Now, when you're melting it, it should be on medium heat. And as soon as you start to see the butter melt, you're going to start to see steam coming from the pan and bubbles that forms around the edges of the pot. You are good to go. We're going to take that and we're going to add it to the flour. So the heat from the milk and butter mixture is going to help lightly cook the flour. When you first mix it, you will notice that it is very rough and very grainy, but as you continue to mix it with the whisk, you will see that it will start to change. The consistency will become super creamy and it's almost like a custard. At that point, go ahead and add in the yolks. Once you add in the yolks and you're mixing it with the whisk, always make sure that the whisk is touching the bottom of your bowl. By doing that, you're avoiding extra air bubbles that can form if your whisk was not touching the bottom. Once you get it all to become homogeneous and smooth, we'll add in the pistachios. So guys, I am telling you, the pistachio really enhances the taste of this cake and it just makes it so incredibly delicious. So I hope that you guys will consider giving this recipe a try. Now, before we move on to the next step, go ahead and pause, hit the like and subscribe button because your continual support for the channel is really what's going to help it grow, and I truly appreciate that. So the color yellow is really beautiful already, but if you want just a little bit of green because it is a pistachio cake, you can add in a little bit of green food coloring or a couple of drops of pandan extract. Okay, so let's talk about egg whites. Your egg whites needs to be cold and you need a little bit of cream of tartar. These two things are going to help delay it from getting to stiff peak. You need soft peak meringue for this recipe. The harder your meringue gets, the worse it's going to be. That's the worst enemy in this recipe, is over whipped egg whites. Okay, so this is the mistake I see most people make, is they go in at really high speed to start off thinking that if I beat the egg whites harder, it's going to be more stable. Actually, it is the opposite. You want to start it at really low speed, on speed number 2, for at least 2 to 3 minutes to build density. You want these very small pockets of air bubbles and not the huge one that has very limited structure to it. Now, once after about 4 minutes or so, you're going to get it to this foamy stage. At that point, you can add in the confectioner's sugar. So confectioner sugar has cornstarch in there, and it really does help to stabilize the egg whites a lot better. It is much lighter, it's much fluffier, is much softer, so it doesn't tear down the egg whites that you've already whipped as well. As soon as all those have been mixed in, you can add in the last batch of the sugar. Again, continue to mix on very low speed. I never go past speed number 3 when I am mixing, and it's actually better to use a hand mixer for this than to use a stand mixer. When you continue to mix the egg whites, you will notice your meringue starts to change in color. It's going to be much wider, and it's going to be very, very glossy, and it's going to be silky smooth. That is what you're looking for. Until you get to that point, it's not quite there yet, but as soon as you get to that point, stop. You don't want to go beyond this. If you go beyond this point right here, it's going to be incredibly hard for you to mix it into your batter, because they get clumpy after that point. And when you start to mix in with the batter, it just doesn't mix in as well as you see how this gets mixed in. Guys, I know I'm spending so much time talking about how to whip the egg whites. I get it. It's just that I can't stress enough about the importance of getting it to the right stage, because that is going to dictate whether you can successfully bake this cake, or it's going to either collapse on you, or it's going to end up with that cracked top, okay? So I get that all the time, those two questions. Okay, why is it that there is a layer of dense cake on the bottom of the cake pan and the rest of the cake is super soft and airy and fluffy? Or the other question, why is it that after I bake my cake, halfway through the baking time, there is a crack on top? And both of those are usually because of the fact that you have built too much air into your meringue. Okay, so when you bake it, the air has to go somewhere and it travels to the top, and that's why you end up with a crack on top of the cake. Or that when you have a lot of clumps in your meringue, what you're going to do, essentially is that you're going to keep on mixing and mixing until you get rid of all the clumps. And so what you end up with is a batter that is super runny, and that settles to the bottom of the cake pan, and that's how you end up with a layer that is different than the rest of the cake, and it's super thick and dense. So once you use the whisk and you mix in the meringue and the batter, about 90% of it should be mixed. At that point, you do have to go in with a spatula, because you do have to scrape the sides of the bowl and the bottom of the bowl. It shouldn't be very many strokes at all at this point, because most of it should have already been mixed in. You do want to check the batter to make sure that there isn't any unmixed meringue, and so just scoop some from the very bottom, and then just make sure everything is well combined. Okay, so when you pour the batter into the cake pan, it should flow down like this in a ribbon-like fashion, and that tells you that the batter was mixed and flowed appropriately. So with the amount of ingredients that I provided in this recipe, which is listed in the bottom in the description box, your batter, if you mix the egg whites correctly and fold it in correctly, the batter should come above the halfway mark. Okay, at this point, go ahead and just shake the baking pan a little bit to kind of even out the surface and give it a couple of taps so that you can break up some of those larger air bubbles. You're going to bake this for 60 to 70 minutes. It's going to be at 310 degrees in the water bath. As you can see here, the cake has now detached itself from the parchment paper, which means that it is fully cooked. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoy this recipe, and I hope that you can successfully make this cake because it is absolutely incredible. The pistachio enhances this cake and it just makes it so addictive. All right, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope that you guys will give me some feedback by commenting and letting me know if you do make it, how it turned out for you. And as always, I appreciate so much for your support, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. And until next time, y'all have a great day.